Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Lawsome episode. Today on our show, we have Andrea Hall, attorney, speaker, author, and coach. And as a lawyer, she's the owner of the Hall Law Office, LLC, a member of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar Association. Also, she's a transformational life coach and owner of Withers Whisper, LLC, a transformational coaching company working with lawyers and other professionals. In April 2016, Andrea earned her certification as an equine Gestalt coach from the Touched by a Horse program. With more than 10 years of being a criminal defense lawyer and her skills in life coaching, she now works with anyone who wants to make a difference in their life. Today's topic is around mental health and wellness within the legal profession. Welcome, Andrea. Thank you for making time to join the show today.
Thanks for having me, Tanner.
Andrea, you have admirable professional career and a very inspiring life story. According to your bio, you reached a point in your life where you worked so hard as a lawyer, you no longer felt a motivation, and you started showing some signs of stress. So would you mind to speak a little bit about that? I know it's a vulnerable topic, but how did you handle the stress in that moment of being a lawyer and just carrying everything that obviously comes to a lawyer day to day?
Well, I was actually in the middle of a 5-day jury trial when my 18-month-old puppy died. She had been sick prior to that and was really struggling, and ultimately passed away the morning of closing arguments. And I was really struggling because it was the first time I had actually felt like what my clients feel like in front of the judge. The judge was very unsympathetic, was pushing through, wanted to get the trial done, and just really didn't have any sympathy for me. And so at that point in time, I said, I'm going to step away from my career because I had already previously been sick and was struggling with an illness that I didn't know what I had. And so I took the summer off and relaxed. I didn't realize how stressed out I was, even though I was being told by my doctor that I was stressed and that my adrenals were failing and things of that nature. Once I stepped away and was able to de-escalate, I realized that, when I stepped back in the courtroom after 3 months, that my heart rate changed and my breathing pattern changed, and I became very aggressive and was in a fight or flight mode, and my voice went up 3 octaves, and I was like, wow, I really was stressed. And I had operated at such a high level of stress that I didn't even realize what it was like to de-escalate and come back down. So after that, I really said, wow, do I want to do this for the rest of my life?
And so talk a little bit about how you worked through that process.
Well, I decided that I needed answers to my health. That was a big thing. And then I ultimately was diagnosed with a brain tumor and had to have emergency brain surgery. And after that, I said, the profession is physically killing me. And I went on, this soul-searching journey prior to that. And once that diagnosis came in, I knew that was my 2x4 upside the head, that I had to do something different or I was going to physically die. And so I was already in the process of becoming certified as an equine Gestalt coach. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do, is to help people in this profession who are really struggling, because our profession does nothing to help us. We're running around with our hair on fire, and, most attorneys are like, it's fine. And I'm like, it's not fine. So I became certified as an equine Gestalt coach and really started focusing, bringing awareness to our profession and helping people figure things out.
Such an inspiration given the circumstances you went through. Can you speak to how is your experience being a criminal defense lawyer? How does that tie in now, or how has that supported your career as a coach?
Well, I think first of all, it gives me instant credibility with, other lawyers and women who might not be lawyers. However, they're, high executives in different professions, CEOs, things of that nature, because women are pretty famous for putting themselves last on the list for taking care of themselves. I don't think I've ever heard a man say, no, I'm not going to go out for a couple cocktails with the guys after work, or go play a round of golf, or go to the gym because I have to pick the kids up from daycare. There's a load of laundry that's calling my name. I have to run home and, make supper for the family. Women have so many things on their list of completion by the end of the day that they don't fit themselves in, and we're giving, and there's nothing to give until, we're physically not able to give anymore. So it's bringing that awareness to women that if you want to continue to give to somebody, you have to have your cup full. It's that whole, thing on the airlines, right? Put your oxygen mask on first, otherwise you won't be able to help anyone else. So that's the first thing.
Sure.
And the other is figuring out, do you truly want to stay in the legal profession? So many people get into the legal profession for reasons that aren't what they dreamed of. We have lawyers in the family, so that's why I went into it. Thought I was going to make a lot of money, so that's why I went into it. It sounded like a really good idea because my boyfriend was going to do it. Whatever the reason is, so many times it is not for their own reasons. So it's figuring out, are you in the legal profession for your own reasons? And do you want to stay there? And how do you set boundaries? And can you do this in a healthy way? Or if not, is there something else that's calling your heart to do in this time frame as you still have life left on this earth? Because unfortunately, we all think we're going to live forever, even though we come into this world knowing that we're going to leave this world. I don't think people really realize how short life is or can be. I'm closer to this side of the dirt these days than I am to this side of life. And before, it used to be no big deal. And now I keep thinking, oh my gosh, does this bring me joy and happiness? And if not, it's on my list of, not to do, because life is too short and it can all be sniffed out before you know it. And if it's not bringing you happiness, why are you doing it?
That is so true, and such a great challenge for each of us listening here, Andrea. I appreciate that. You referenced health and well-being and taking care of yourself, and I want to go that route, the health side, particularly around bad habits. Naturally, the legal profession it's busy, it's complex, it's dynamic, it's ever changing, it's constant. Everything just piles up, and lawyers can spend literally day and nights working through a particular client or multiple client cases. And in that, just as you implied, we tend to neglect our own health, neglect good, healthy habits. And in turn, we create bad habits that ultimately lead to poor health, especially poor mental health, even well beyond the physical health. And sometimes the mental health leads to the physical health issues. Some attorneys may be able to identify some of these bad habits before they become a serious problem. Unfortunately, others do not. And they just continue in this endless cycle of stress and being unhealthy, which is difficult to escape the longer you stay in that. So all being said, I think we can both acknowledge that. What are these negative practices that you've seen that may be some early signs that other attorneys can hopefully realize before they get to the point of potentially hitting rock bottom?
Well, when you're younger, it's, a Red Bull, a Starbucks, no sleep, and, drinking, and you can sustain that for a little while, yet it's not sustainable forever. And unfortunately, when you're young and you enter the practice, law firms definitely take advantage of that. They, are expecting 80, 90, 100 billable hours a week. And if you look at the profession, your body is not set up for that, right? Like your body can only sustain that for so long before it's going to crash and burn. So, the lack of sleep, having a regular sleep habit, making sure you're drinking lots of water. So many times people are going off of adrenaline and caffeine and they're not taking in water, and the things that they're taking in, dehydrate the body instead of hydrate it, Making sure you have something that is your go-to to de-stress, whether that's, reading a book, exercising, whatever it is for you, going to yoga, having some sort of a practice that you can squeeze in sometimes on a daily basis, if not a couple times a week, something to help you de-escalate and transition from the law practice to home life. And are there times that I find myself, busier than others? Sure. Mm-hmm. However, I definitely find that when I don't have to be busy, that I do my best to remove myself from the things that, cause me to be busy so that I can relax. It's very easy in our profession to avoid any sort of emotion because we're taught to be very stoic and keep it together and things of that nature. And I have found for me as a woman, that's not always easy and healthy. And so, you bring that home and then you're not able to, be soft and feminine with your masculine partner, and so then you have relationship problems. And it's not always easy in our profession to ask for help. We're the ones that help everyone else. So we don't typically look for someone to help us, or that it's okay to ask for that, right? The minute you tell somebody you're struggling, if you're a lawyer, it's much different than if you say, I'm struggling as a teacher or a daycare provider or, an employee at Walmart. We have a status and a stigma that we're supposed to have it all together. And the fact of the matter is we don't have it any more together than the garbage man has it together. Yet it's not safe to always mention that. There's really only a handful of states that even require any sort of mental health or emotional continuing education credits. And again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, our profession is running around with its hair on fire with addiction problems, communication problems, criminal problems, taking money from the trust account that doesn't belong to them. And they're all intertwined, right? Like, if you're drinking, you're more than likely not communicating with your client. If you've picked up criminal charges or you're doing drugs, you're not communicating with your client. You may have stolen money from the trust account to deal with the addiction issue. So they all go hand in hand, and yet we're just shoving everything under the rug. No one wants to look at it. And so it's been a struggle to get even Colorado to acknowledge that the lawyers in the state need to really start focusing on their mental and emotional well-being, or we're not going to have a profession. People are burning out. People are, picking up criminal charges. We've got addiction issues, all of those things. And I know that we're not the only profession, but my profession is what I'm focused on. So we need help, and it needs to be safe to acknowledge that we need help.
Well, and I realize that every individual is different. Every case is different in that respect, and I fully acknowledge that. But I also know that in your experience, you've learned good, sound practices that can help lawyers cope with these stresses dealing within the legal profession. So based on those experiences, what are those good practices or habits that help relieve stress, or that you would recommend for our listeners to start to bring more balance and joy in their daily lives?
Well, I mean, the first thing is just being as much in the present moment as you can be. Most human beings are in the past or in the future. They're not right here, right now. being present with either the person that they're having a conversation with or just in the moment themselves. Like I said, we're scattered. We're such a microwave, instantaneous gratification society, you know? So that would be the first thing. And even if that's just 5 minutes a day until you can start building that muscle and making it longer, finding some sort of exercise regimen that works for you, making sure that you're having a healthy diet and intaking enough water to sustain your body. Yes, cocktails are great. I love them just like everyone else does. Unfortunately, sometimes it goes to the extreme, knowing, do you have an addictive personality? Is the drinking becoming an excess? Is it something that you're using to cope and hide from reality, right? So just incorporating just a few of those things, I think would help with mental health and awareness. But I think the biggest thing, and that's what I work with the horses, is dealing with being in the present moment and then healing trauma that you may or may not know exists instead of running from and attempting to hide. Sometimes being a workaholic becomes an addiction, and that addiction is to cover up the pain of something underneath there. And so I think that's really important. I've been a self-help guru for probably a good 15, 16 years. And once I started down that path, it feels like there's no turning back, You're constantly peeling another layer of the onion back and figuring out who you are today versus who you were yesterday, and hoping that tomorrow you can be a better version of who you were or who you are today, right? So
That's so true, and this is it's a challenging topic. It's obviously that this whole concept around mental health in the legal profession, whether it's dealing with anxiety, depression, drug abuse, you name it, the legal profession has it, unfortunately. But you're right. There's such a stigma around this concept of talking about it that it seems as though lawyers just stay away from it entirely, and they just kind of try to suppress it, push it down. And there's no question that culturally that's only forced more problems and it's essentially trying to hide from the challenges. And all of the suggestions you're making are very practical. They're daily habits, they're daily decisions that individuals need to take, but it certainly helps to have some support. Have you ever experienced where your personal experience in dealing with lawyers, have you personally seen that lawyers are hesitant to speak out on this? And what do you think's driving that?
well, yeah, I mean, I experience it all the time. When I have conversations with lawyers, a lot of the times the response is, well, that would be good for a client. I don't have any problems. And I'm like, the fact of the matter is we all have problems. We're all here on this earth to learn lessons. And so it's getting people to even become aware that there is an issue is a hurdle in and of itself. And then, time is another issue. And I tell people all the time, there's only 24 hours in the day. We all have it. None of us are blessed with more or less of it. It's how you choose to use it. And like I said at the beginning of this interview, women are famous for giving and giving. And then they're like, at the end of the day, there's nothing left for them. And so it's choosing themselves first. But unfortunately, a lot of times women have been raised that that's selfish. And so it's undoing some of the thought process, the things that we believe are true because our mother told us, our grandmother told us, or we observed that, right? So it's removing some of those thoughts or beliefs or values and going, is that working for you, So that becomes an issue, as well as, just getting people to put their guard down, right? like, you don't have to have it all together, and our profession doesn't have it all together, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And those are, I think, some of the things that our profession is learning. Would I like them to learn faster? So Gestalt is a German word that means wholeness, and it's a therapeutic technique. However, I am not a therapist. However, I have had 4 years of training in the Gestalt technique. And so basically what I do when I sit across from a client is hear what they're having an issue with in the present moment, and then figure out what the trauma was in the background that caused the issue of what's happening here in the present moment. So an example is someone who's potentially having an issue with their boss. They may be triggered by their boss as a result of the way they look, the way they act, the way they sound. And so it's figuring out what happened in the past that's causing them to be triggered in the present moment and healing that part of the past. So my horses and I coactively partner through this process. And the horses are feeding me as much information, if not more, than what the client is, because the horses truly are always in the present moment, and they're not distracted by things like judgment or calendars or time, because all they care about is what's happening in the moment, because they're such a prey animal. Like, they may be in the middle of grazing, eating good hay, however, something piques their attention and they stop, they become aware, and they determine if they need to flee that situation or if their safety is at risk. And as long as it's not, they go right back to eating the good hay, where we as human beings don't do that. So the horses are a beautiful piece of the work, and they partner with me coactively through this process. And it's beautiful to watch someone come in, be stressed out, look exhausted, and have them feeling like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And ultimately, at the end of the session, they look like they've lost 150 pounds, had a facelift, and are truly a new person after we go through a session, which is about an hour and a half long. So the process is really beautiful. We are able to open someone up, get to the root of the issue, and close that circle and heal that piece. Now, there may be other parts to that piece of work. However, I can tell you that for the most part, even healing one piece of that maybe 8-part puzzle or piece of pie, causes someone to feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off their shoulders. So I truly enjoy what I do, and it's amazing to watch the transformation from beginning to end with a client.
That is so fascinating, Andrea. I'm curious, and this is more of just a personal curiosity. Does it help to be a horse lover? Are your clients often horse lovers, or does that even have any factor in it?
It doesn't necessarily have a factor in it. However, yes, a lot of times the people are either intrigued because the horses are involved, or they do have a love for horses. Do I work with people that are somewhat scared of horses? Absolutely. You're in an arena, you're not riding. However, you're present with a 12 or a 15 pound or 12 or a 1,500 pound animal. And so it really brings people to a place of being present, for one, and for two, the horses are majestic. For the most part, I have not met too many people that don't get excited when they find out that I work with horses. Even if they're scared of them, they've been injured by them or something of that nature, there's still this intrigue of working with a horse and finding out what a horse has to say. I would put my horse up against any trained FBI agent and lie detector test, because they can sniff out the truth like nobody's business, because they are so present with what's going on, and they're really only attracted to someone when that person is speaking their truth. So if someone is not in alignment and not speaking their truth, my horse doesn't want anything to do with them. So it's an amazing process to watch. And like I said, people just settle into their body when they're in the presence of a horse. I think, you can kind of compare it when you see animals come and meet like the elderly or kids. It's that same feeling that I observe with my clients when they're with the horses.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Andrea, for joining us and sharing such wisdom with our audience. I'd ask you, any closing thoughts or final advice that you'd provide our listeners?
Yeah, listen to the whispers. That's what I tell my clients all the time. We get the pebble before we get the stone, and before you get the stone, you get the after you get the stone, if you're still not listening, then you're going to get the 2x4 upside the head. So I think if people could just pause for a moment and listen to what their body's telling them, the messages that they're receiving around them. So many times we see a yellow light, and what do? We just push through it, right? Instead of taking a moment to pause. That's what we do in our life. The minute stress starts to amp up, we have anxiety, we just continue to push through instead of taking a moment to pause. There's a reason you're being called to pause. And most human beings, for the most part, don't hear it, or if they do hear it, they choose to ignore it. And so I think that is the most important thing of what I do in my work, is getting people to pause, see the caution light, and go, okay, what do I need to hear? What do I need to see, instead of pushing through? And allow yourself to be open to the present moment and learn to strengthen that muscle, because it's not always easy.
What's the best way for our listeners to contact you?
They can reach me at my website at www.withers, WITHERS, whisper.com. So witherswhisper.com.
Lawsome by Consult Webs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Lawsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.